Alba432. You'll find me on YouTube there. Leave a like and subscribe and all that sort of stuff. But enjoy your day and hope to see you again. Cheers.
Well, thanks. That's great. And take note of the name Alan Stevenson. Look him up on YouTube. And we'll proceed with our meeting with the several speakers who will bring together in all the aspects the genocide in Palestine and the conflict in Ukraine, because they are now merging into a very dangerous conflict zone between the Black Sea, the Mediterranean and the Baltic. The Trimarium has sometimes been called. Our foolish rulers are leading us into a dangerous flashpoint of possible conflict with Russia. We must avoid that at all costs. And although our gathering today is small, you are the activists who must take out this message to your contacts, to the wider population, and spread the word about our power to bring an end to conflicts in Palestine and between Russia and NATO. NATO encroachment is something that we are actually responsible in a great extent for. Our foolish leaders who purport to lead the country are getting together and pushing NATO towards Russian borders. Just this week they are discussing the fact that British Storm Shadow missiles might be employed deep into Russia, and the speakers today will cover all those aspects. They'll cover the false information about Iran supplying drones to Russia, which gives an excuse to NATO to arm further with lethal Russian territory penetrating munitions. So we must take the fight to our own government. That's our responsibility. We live in this country. We must create a movement that opposes war. And in fact, some people say the current situation is deployed to make us fearful, to undermine our public confidence. But that is the opposite. The people present today have got 4 years of experience and more of campaigning against nuclear weapons, against state oppression in this very Glasgow Green. And they built up a power of actually resisting oppression. So let's resist war as well. It's a sacred duty to do so. And I'm glad to see various factions across the political spectrum united in that call today. So thanks for coming out on a fairly miserable day. And we're going to start with a great range of speakers who will provide a spectrum of opinion, a spectrum of analysis it's actually to teach you how to take the message forward into the general population. So listen carefully, acquire the techniques of argument with your friends, neighbours and political and social colleagues, because we must, I emphasise, must develop this broad anti-war movement. And a great site on YouTube is to watch the weekly broadcasts of the last Jacobites. And we have here today one of our frequent speakers, Alex Pearce, who's going to be our first speaker and introduce her analysis of this terrible subject. So.
Good afternoon, guys. Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Okay, good. First, just to say, don't worry, I'm not going to do the midget and khaki spiel again. I do like to have at least something new to say to you, despite the fact that our warmongering leaders never seem to change their rhetoric, or their tactics for that matter. The only thing that does change is how close we are to a full-blown war, how close we are to the edge of the precipice, how little time we have to stop the plunge over and into hell on earth. I'm sorry, I'd love to start us off this afternoon on a cheerful note, but I also refuse to lie to you. So let's start there with how nothing changes. First time I spoke at one of these rallies was back in June last year in Edinburgh. I talked at the time about how much in aid we were sending to Ukraine and about how many times we have moved our red lines, moving over and on to sending the next thing, every next thing that we swore we would never send. That was 15 months ago. Nothing has changed. Then the cost of living was biting. Now Sir Keir has a 22 billion black hole to fill in the country's finances, at least so he tells us. Nothing has changed. Today things are so dire that just this last week our pensioners have had what many of them clung to as a lifeline snatched away in the shape of the winter fuel allowance, and yet we continue to send £3 billion a year to Ukraine. Worse, we have promised to continue to send £3 billion a year until at least 2031. I know I keep saying it, but £3 billion a year. That's 21 billion for you right there, Keir, up into 2031. Surely it's time to fucking means test Zelensky. I'm sorry, but I'm not in the mood to watch my language. Not when all the rumours suggest he's going after the single person's council tax discount next. And not because that will put my council tax up by 25%. It will, but I will deal. I'll work longer hours, I'll put on a jumper. I have the mobility to keep warm. No, it will hit hardest on that same demographic that just lost the winter fuel allowance, on our over 65. We're sorry, Grandad. We know you've lost your partner of 50 years and have your pension. But if you could just keep paying us the same as you did for the two of you, please. Hate to ask, but you see the Foreign Secretary just pledged another £600 million in legal aid and, you know, black hole finances. Except it's not funny. It's not remotely funny. People will die this winter because of it. They took the decision knowing people will die this winter because of it. They took the decision knowing people will die this winter because of it, because they'd rather keep supplying weapons to Kiev, so even more people can die. I said back at that first rally, make it make sense. I know now it never will. It never will make sense because it's all a show. Not the war, that's very, very real. But the difficult decisions, the gradual committal of more and more firepower, more and more involvement, there's no doubt in my mind that our leaders want this war. If I'm wrong, and I'd love to be, then let them prove it to me. Just stop. No ifs, no buts. Just stop. Just stop the war. Because it really is that simple. And I don't doubt they would laugh at that. They would say I'm naive for saying that. But this is not me ignoring inconvenient truths. Rather, this is me knowing the uncomfortable truths that they want us to continue to ignore. Like the fact it was us, the UK, that scuppered the peace talks back in Istanbul. It could have ended then. It could have ended there. It should have ended there. But the UK, as in its leaders, wanted war. They still do. It doesn't matter that we've changed the party in power. The rhetoric is unchanged. And that's all we hear, rhetoric. Words on words on words that say nothing and mean even less. We were told on Thursday The delivery of Iranian missiles to Russia has changed the debate about Ukraine using Western-provided long-range missiles against targets inside Russia, after Antony Blinken and David Lammy visited Kiev together. And it will always be Kiev, it will not be Kyiv. And yet, we are told no agreement has been reached between Starmer and Biden about committing to their use. As yet, we are told that. I want to believe that's good news. I so want to believe. But I know it will be just another no, 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 yes. It's like a fucking Bond girl. Nothing has changed. Nothing changes. Nothing changes, but at that moment, everything does. It changes because the Ukraine using is a polite fiction. Ukraine does not have satellites to target them. Ukraine does not have the personnel trained to fire them. If UK and US long-range weapons are used to target mainland Russia, it will be UK and US personnel targeting them. It will be the UK and the US targeting Russia. We will be entering the war. And this time it will not be our own red lines we are crossing. It will be Putin's. He's made very clear that if the UK long-range weapons are to be fired by UK personnel on mainland Russia, then Russia will consider that as the UK entering the war. Quite frankly, I cannot fault his logic. 20th century history tells us a story of us blindly sleepwalking into World War I. Except there never was any sleepwalking. There was always a series of very specific decisions made, very specific actions taken, and the same is true today. It tells the story of us embarking on World War II because we could no longer do any other respond to the invasion of Poland. And I'm sorry if I shatter any illusions, but we cared no more for Poland than we do for Ukraine. We aren't doing this for Ukraine. This is a war to preserve, or to try and preserve, US hegemony. Try because it cannot but fail. The world is moving on. We could have moved on with it, but our leaders and those who control them are stuck in the past. Make no mistake, the end of US hegemony, I'll get that spelled out right one day, but it's the final death throes of the British Empire as well. We just can't let go. You see, they don't want a better world. They don't want a more equal world. They just want the world they remember from their youth, and they want to rule it. And they don't care much if they have to do that on a pile of bodies, because they will be your sons and daughters and not theirs. Nothing changes. Nothing changes because they don't want the world to change. In August last year, I spoke at my first rally here in Glasgow Green. I said I didn't really want to be here. What I meant was that I wish cooler heads would have prevailed, that I wished our leaders would have seen sense. They hadn't. They still haven't. And I don't feel that now. I need to be here. I could do no other. I need to be here. I need to be doing more. And I intend to. And I'll come back to that. What I don't understand is why so few get that. We should be packing out this park. And that is to take nothing away from those of you who are here. You are worth your weight in gold because you were here. You were standing for peace before we toppled over the precipice. You didn't wait for someone else to fix it. Nothing changes. Nothing will ever change unless we change it. The last time I was here was in June. I spoke about them taking us even closer to a NATO or a UK boots on the ground situation. They still are. don't think for a moment that the whole long-range missile rhetoric means the end of that idea. More, it is the start of its implementation. If we give Ukraine permission to fire those missiles on Russia, we will be firing on Russia. We will, de facto, have boots on the ground. That's the other side of that rhetoric. Rhetoric and rumour is how they are fighting this war. It has been from the start. It has been from the start. Russia bad, Ukraine good is the animal farm rhetoric. Rumour? Did you hear? Iran sending missiles to Russia. Start the rumour. Respond to the rumour. Act shocked when Russia responds. Rinse. Repeat. It's how we've always waged war from the beginning of time. Let me make one thing clear. I'm not stating NATO bad, Russia good. I'm merely calling out our leaders for their continuation of this war. No, for their pushing and encouraging and supporting of this war. It's up to the people of Russia to call out their leaders if they wish to. That misconception is another of their rumours. Do you realise she's been supporting terrorists? Being opposed to us pursuing war in Ukraine does not make me any sort of Russian fifth columnist. I shouldn't have to explain that to right-minded people. I shouldn't need to clarify that that's right-minded as in correcting thinkers, not in a political meaning either, but I feel I need to. And as for the first clarification, we live in a world, in a country where you can now be jailed for a Facebook post. So, but being opposed to the pursuit of war in Ukraine does not make me a Russian agent. Just as being against the genocide in Gaza does not make me a terrorist supporter, though I have been called such and worse. And I'm not going to call that one a war, because it's not. 41,118 people, nearly 16,500 children have been slaughtered since the 7th of October in Gaza. That's at least 4,000 up from the figures I gave you in June. 95,121 have been injured. 703 have been killed and 5,700 been injured in the West Bank. You know, that area that's not and never has been controlled by Hamas. That's genocide. That's ethnic cleansing. And you will not convince me any different. In the history of warfare, nothing changes. Every hour in Gaza, 15 people are killed, 6 of whom are children. 35 people are injured, 42 bombs are dropped, and 12 buildings are destroyed. During the time we are here this afternoon, 45 more people will be dead. But that is a tip of the iceberg. Tit-for-tat bombing continues between Israel and Hezbollah in Lebanon. A full ground assault by the IDF is still being talked of. And of course, the world still waits to see if Iran will respond. And that's not to mention the ever-growing armada in the area. Nothing changes, at least not for the better. And yet, the casualty figures in Gaza will pale into insignificance if they take us into a third world war. And we are getting deadly close. Estimates, and they do vary, put the dead of World War I at 10 million. They put the dead of World War II at a conservative 50 million. And those are direct deaths, not the full toll. With the advances in weaponry since the 1940s, the death toll can't be imagined. And that's if they don't go nuclear. And we are closer to a nuclear war than we were at the height of the Cold War. Again, nothing changes. Nothing changes, but something needs to. We have to do something. I have to do something. I told you last time, all we have are our voices, and we need to raise them. We must make this a shout that they can't ignore. Make the call for peace a cry so loud that no one can ignore it again, that no one can remain in ignorance of. We need to make it a clear cry, not hidden under the clamour of our concerns. A single cry, not against Ukraine, not against Israel, not against left or right, but for peace. A single call for peace. A single stand for peace. And I'm using those words very deliberately, because I said I need to be doing more. I said I intend to. So I will be putting on more events. I will be starting, trying to push, trying to grow this movement and others together under the banner Stand for Peace. We have an event booked in Glasgow on the 12th of October, and I see you standing in the rain today, and I thank you for it, and I thank you to come on that day. Come and stand with us. It will be in George Square, and it will start 1:30. We'll be speaking, we'll have speakers, we'll have a rally, and we will be marching afterwards, so it will be a fairly sharp 1:30 start. And we are looking at other events, we are looking at other dates around Scotland. We're going to take the message to the people, because I want to be engaging with the general public as well. We're going to take the message to the general public. That's why I'm looking to march. I'm not standing something in opposition to what we are doing today. I'm not starting something in opposition to any other fight for peace. We are all fighting the same war. But if you have the time, if you can make it, please come and join us on the 12th. And please, do not be silent in the meantime. Please, keep up that cry in your daily lives, with your friends, with your neighbours at work. Keep up that cry. Cry for peace. Stand for peace. Thank you.
Well, thanks very much, Alex, and we'll all remember that date of the 12th of October. And